Okay, so we just introduced you to the concept of a discipleship group. Now let's talk about, in this video, the greatest group ever. And it was, of course, the group that Jesus led, because Jesus led a discipleship group. Now let's take a look at the Gospel of John and see what we can pick up from this group. First of all, Jesus started the group by simply inviting a few guys to follow him. John chapter 1 says it like this. The disciples were starting to come around him, and it says Jesus turned and saw a couple of them following. And he said to them, "What are you seeking?" And they said to him, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" And look at his response. I love it. He just said, "Come and you will see." That's kind of how he invited people. He didn't lay out exactly what they were going to experience. He just says, "Come and see." And then he invited them to follow him. And a little later in the chapter, it says the next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip, and he said to him, "Follow me." And this is how he invited people into his discipleship group. And we know the story that he invited 12 people to follow him and to walk with him for a period of up to 3 years. And this is exactly what he did and how he started his discipleship group, just simply by inviting a few guys to follow him. Now, the second thing we see is that he loved and prayed for them. All throughout the Gospels, we notice this. Let's just take a look at some of those examples. John 15 and verse 9, he's praying. He's saying this to these guys. He says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love." And so we see this. He talks a lot about how much he loves them, and it's rooted in the relationship that he has with the Father. So God is a relational God. That's the concept of the Trinity. He's a relational God, and so we should be in relationship with one another. And Jesus led and cared for his discipleship group. He loved them, and he told them that you should abide in his love. And he says in verse 13, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends." See, Jesus is just getting ready to go to the cross. And he's explaining to them that the reason he's doing that is because he loves them and he cares for them, because they're his group, they're his people. Later on, we see that he prays for them. Kind of that's sort of his part of his role is he prays for them. And John 17 is actually his prayer. He prays, "I'm praying for them. I'm not praying for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours." And later on, he says, "While I was with them, I kept them in your name, which you have given me." And then he says this, "I have guarded them." And so we see in these verses his pastoral heart, his care and his love for them. He's praying for them because he loves them and cares for them. And that's really, that's why we talk about this in your discipleship group, that it should involve your group leader caring for and praying for you, just like Jesus did with his group. Now, we also see that he taught them the word. He taught them truth. John 17, verse 8 says this, "For I have given them the words that you gave me, and they have received them and have come to know in truth that I came from you." So he's basically saying, I've been teaching them truth. That's been part of my role. I've been over these months and years, Jesus was teaching his group all about the truth. He says later on, he prays in verse 17, "Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth." And so that's why we talk about the fact that in your discipleship group, a big part of this is the leader should teach you truth, because this is what Jesus did with his discipleship group. And then the last thing we notice is that the group ended. It didn't just go on forever. John 16:28, Jesus says there, "I came from the Father and have come into the world, and now I'm leaving the world and I'm going to the Father." So he was basically saying, this has been a good run, but all along I knew that this group would end, that I poured into you for a period of time, and then I'm going to leave. And we see then that he empowers them to go and start their own groups. But the point for now is that the group had an end date, and that's why we talk about in our discipleship group that it's for a certain period of time. We're suggesting 3 months. But notice this, Jesus led his group for only 3 years. But it changed everything. First, it changed the group members. Go back and read the Gospel of John if you have time. It just absolutely changed their lives. He talks all throughout those passages about the fact that he came to bring them joy. And that really is part of what this group's about, is when you connect with one another and someone is caring for you and you're being discipled and you're learning with one another, just like in Jesus's group, it brings joy to the entire group. It brings purpose to the entire group. It'll change your life. But it also changed the world. This one small group, the group that Jesus started 2,000 years ago, changed the entire world. And think about that. And think about how if you do your discipleship group, how it might impact not just your life, but others as well. But for right now, why don't you hit pause and talk a little bit about these questions in red, have a little conversation about this. And then we've got one more video for today to talk about the group commitment. If you are going to be a part of this discipleship group, what exactly that commitment is. So we'll see you in the next video.